Good day, randos. Given my recent struggles in releasing my Battle of the Five Armies video, I wanted to just record an overview of what actually happened with the delay, as well as my experience in dealing with YouTube's copyright system since starting my Rings of Power series. This is just going to be me talking, so don't expect anything in the way of visuals to accompany this. Just sit back and let the nonsense flow into your earballs. So first off, what is YouTube's copyright system? Simply put, it is an algorithm that detects copyrighted content that has been uploaded to YouTube, and its purpose is to prevent breaches in copyright. Protecting intellectual property is obviously extremely important, and YouTube needs to comply with both copyright laws and the individual requests of each copyright holder. The idea is that if I upload a rip of Metallica's Enter Sandman and put it on YouTube, or if I upload the scene from The Hobbit where Bilbo plays riddles with Gollum in its entirety and I do nothing to alter the content, then this is essentially stealing. Or at least it would be if I were to monetize the video. More on that later. YouTube's copyright system exists in multiple stages. The first stage is Content ID. If a video is hit by Content ID, this means that YouTube's algorithm has matched content from the video with content from a vast chasm of reference files that have been provided to YouTube by various copyright holders. Every video that is uploaded to YouTube is scanned by the Content ID system when the video is processed before it can be made public. The easiest things to match are things like films and music because waveforms and sequences of images are very simple for an automated system like this to match. The consequences of being hit by the Content ID system vary depending on what the copyright holder has dictated to YouTube. The video may have no restrictions, it may be restricted to certain countries, you may be able to release it but not monetize it, or you may not be able to release it at all. In some instances, you may be allowed to release the video, but anywhere up to 100% of the ad revenue from the video will go to the copyright holder. In virtually every instance of scenes from films being uploaded to YouTube by a third party, this is going to be what's happening. There are ways to avoid Content ID when editing your video. The simplest way is to not use any copyrighted content, or to use still images in place of video footage. This obviously doesn't really work for the kinds of videos that myself and many others choose to create. A general rule is that using short enough clips from a film will not trigger the Content ID algorithm, which is why many people will use short clips lasting only a few seconds at a time. This method is not foolproof, however, as different copyright holders evidently have different trigger points at which Content ID will detect a match. More on that later. Additionally, I have found instances where I simply need to play a clip that lasts 10 seconds or so in order to effectively make the point that I'm making, and a 10-second long unedited clip will almost certainly trip the Content ID algorithm. Rather irritatingly, when you upload a video that triggers Content ID, YouTube will not tell you all of the sections where the copyrighted content was detected. It will instead tell you where one of the offending sections is. My guess is that the algorithm stops scanning as soon as it detects matched content, but the effect on content creators is that if they choose to re-edit their video so as to get past Content ID, they may end up having to re-edit that video many times without any clear guidance on what exactly it is that they should be editing out. This might be fine if the video is a few minutes long, but with longer video essays that are between 2 and 4 hours long, this becomes a not insignificant amount of work. More on that later. So, you upload your video that uses copyrighted material, and it does not trip the Content ID system. Well done, you can release your video with no automated intrusion from YouTube. If your video does trigger Content ID, and you don't want to or are unable to edit it, then you will move on to Step 2. Step 2 is much simpler and can actually be skipped entirely if you're confident that you have the relevant permissions to upload your video. Step 2 is when you dispute the Content ID claim. If you do this, the copyright holder is given 30 days to respond. Theoretically, this means that a person watches the video and makes a decision, but I highly doubt that this is the case. More on that later. This means that, in theory, if Content ID has matched your video to copyrighted material incorrectly, or if you believe that your video is allowed to use the copyrighted material because it is transformative content or similar, then a person employed by the copyright holder will check and will either agree or disagree as to whether this is the case. Of course, even if a real person looks at the video at this point, they have no incentive whatsoever to accept the dispute, as they would be an employee of the copyright holder, and they are not required to provide any further information as to why they have rejected the claim. They can simply say no. If, however, your dispute is accepted, well done, you can release your video. If your dispute is rejected, you actually don't lose anything, however, you are back to square one with a video that cannot be released. Which brings us to step 3. Step 3 is the appeal stage. When you issue an appeal to the copyright holder, they have 7 days to respond, and it is therefore theoretically preferable to the dispute option because disputes can take more than 4 times as long to resolve. I have absolutely no idea why this is the case, it simply is. Like the dispute option, the appeal option theoretically means that a person employed by the copyright holder will watch your video and will either agree or disagree with your claim. Unlike the dispute option, the appeal option requires detailed information from the claimant to explain why they think they are allowed to use the copyrighted material. It also requires that the claimant submit their name, address, phone number, etc., presumably so as to avoid fraudulent claims. So, if the copyright holder agrees that a mistake has been made and your argument of fair use or similar was compelling and accurate, well done, you can release your video. If, however, the copyright holder disagrees for any reason that they do not have to elaborate on whatsoever, they will issue a DMCA takedown request to YouTube, your video will be deleted, and your channel will receive a copyright strike. If your video was private or unlisted, as will be the case for any video before it is made public, it will still be deleted. Regarding copyright strikes, these are essentially YouTube's way of punishing and scaring channels for appealing decisions made by faceless multi-billion-dollar megacorporations, or in this case, copyright holders. And if you receive one copyright strike, it doesn't usually mean anything on its own. Your channel is fine, your other videos are probably not affected. However, YouTube snuck in this little clause just in case. Quote, copyright strikes may affect your ability to monetize. In addition, if your live stream is removed for copyright, your access to live streaming will be restricted for 7 days, end quote. Thankfully, the live stream one isn't relevant in my case, and none of my other videos have been demonetized, but the fact that this clause exists, theoretically, means that YouTube could demonetize your entire channel after you receive a single copyright strike. Copyright strikes expire after 90 days. However, if you receive 3 within a 90-day period, your channel, any associated channels, and every video you have ever uploaded will be deleted. So, what happens next? The copyright holder has rejected your appeal, your channel has received a copyright strike, and your video has been deleted. You now have 2 options. The first option is to start again, re-edit some or all of your video, hoping that it will be accepted this time, and thereby risk a second copyright strike if you edit the wrong bit, because as explained earlier, you are editing blind, with no guidance as to precisely what you should be removing. The second option, if you are unwilling or unable to start again, is to proceed to step 4. Step 4 is the counter notification. This is when you make a legal request that YouTube reinstate your video. If your video has been removed due to a mistake or misidentification, you can tell YouTube that the copyright holder is taking the piss, albeit in somewhat more precise and legally acceptable language, and YouTube will then give the copyright holder 10 working days to respond. Once again, you need to provide personal information and explain in detail why your video is not a breach of their copyright. If a lawyer is going to get involved, they will probably do so at this point. There are 4 possible outcomes from submitting a counter notification. Outcome 1. The copyright holder will not respond within the 10 working day time limit, and YouTube will then reinstate your video. The video is then protected from future removal requests from this particular copyright holder, as they had their chance to respond and they didn't. However, it does not necessarily protect the video from removal requests from other copyright holders if your video contains multiple copyrighted sources. Outcome number 2. The copyright holder reviews your video and your counter notification. They determine either that the video does not breach their copyright, or that they do not think that they can prove this in a court of law, and so they tell YouTube, and then YouTube reinstates the video. Outcome number 3. The copyright holder, believing that their copyrighted material is being used illegally, will provide YouTube with evidence that they are pursuing legal action to prevent the video from being reinstated. In theory, the copyright holder will only do this if the video is illegally using their copyrighted material. They are not going to do this fraudulently or because the video was a negative review or whatever, because simply put, it costs them money to do this. And if the claimant were to meet them in court and win, then it would obviously cost them even more. If this happens, the video will remain deleted, the copyright strike will also remain on the channel, and the claimant will have no, the claimant will have no further recourse than to go to court, or as described previously, to re-edit the video and risk further copyright claims. And outcome number 4, YouTube will deem the counterclaim as fraudulent and will terminate your channel. Yes, you heard me correctly. Yes, I did ask YouTube repeatedly on Twitter what precisely constitutes fraudulent, and I did not get a satisfactory answer. When you submit a counter notification, you are risking the deletion of your entire YouTube channel. So, now that I've explained how the system works, or maybe doesn't, I will move on to how I have personally interacted with this system in the past year. This part requires a bit of guesswork, but given my research into how the system works, I'm fairly certain of what I'm about to say. So, when I released episodes 1 to 7 of my Rings of Power series, I had 0 issues with the copyright system. There may have been 1 or 2 clips that were matched with Content ID, but if this happened, I simply re-edited the offending portion. The videos then passed on the second attempt, and I don't honestly remember if that happened. My first interaction with YouTube's broken copyright system was with episode 8 of Rings of Power. I uploaded my video and kept it private for about a week before releasing, because even though YouTube scans every upload as you upload them, I wanted to release the video on a specific day, which is why I kept it private for a week. No issues were detected, and the video went live as planned. Less than an hour later, I received messages from people telling me that the video had been blocked. The Content ID system had evidently flagged one particular section, which consisted of one 14-second-long clip that I had cut into 2 6-second clips with the middle 2 seconds removed. This was evidently not enough for it to avoid being caught by Content ID. As for why the Content ID system didn't trigger until after the video was actually live, I have absolutely no idea. I highly doubt that it was a manual claim, because my channel was on around 1,000 subs at the time, and I also highly doubt that it was a random delay on the Content ID system, because it only triggered after the video went live. So I couldn't even guess at what happened here. Anyway, thankfully, given the size of my channel at the time, the original upload of the video that was then blocked had only received about 500 views at the time at which it was blocked. But were this to happen now, the number would of course be far higher, and if this were to happen to one of the bigger guys, it would be exponentially higher again. So, I re-edited that single portion of the video, re-uploaded it, and it has remained live with no further issues. The Avatar 2 video and the Rings of Power Final Autopsy then went up with no issues. Which brings us to The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Until this point, I had only interacted with the Content ID system, which is step 1. I had never had to proceed any further, because each time a video was flagged by Content ID, it would say 4 minutes 15 to 4 minutes 25, matched to Rings of Power episode 8, and I would then change that segment and the video would then be cleared. Preparing the first Hobbit video for release is one of the most pointlessly time-consuming things I think I have ever done. I uploaded the finished video, and it was flagged by Content ID. Okay, nothing out of the ordinary here, so I re-edited the offending segment and I tried again. And again, and again. I re-edited, reprinted, and re-uploaded a 2.5-hour long video about 50 times before I started to give up. And of course, the option of appealing was always there, but I had never had to appeal before, and frankly I didn't want my relatively new channel to receive a copyright strike if I could simply avoid this by re-editing the video. So once I got to about 50 uploads, I thought, okay, to hell with this, I'm going to appeal it. And as the appeal process takes up to 7 days, I thought, in the meantime, I'll continue to re-edit the video, just in case the appeal is rejected, because otherwise I would end up in a situation where I have nothing to release. And for clarity here, the version of the video that I appealed was the original unedited version before I edited any of it. So, a few days later, the appeal was accepted and Warner Brothers rescinded their claim on my video. Fantastic news, I thought, if not for the fact that by this point I was on my 79th revision. Meaning that, in hindsight, I had been scared into not clicking the appeal button due to the threat of receiving a copyright strike and instead decided to spend God knows how many hours re-editing a video only for the original unedited video to be cleared by the appeal process. Which, I guess, means the copyright system was working as intended because the threat of a copyright strike served its purpose. Had it worked entirely, however, I guess I probably would have given up instead of persevering by re-editing the video 79 fucking times, so maybe it was only a partial success from their perspective. So, after a massive amount of wasted effort, the first Hobbit video was released. The second Hobbit video was very surprisingly a pain-free experience. I uploaded the finished video and immediately appealed the content claim. The reason I did this was because I had wasted 2 weeks editing the previous video only for the original version to then pass the appeal process. So this time, I didn't bother, and I just immediately hit the appeal button. A few days later, and once again, Warner Brothers rescinded their copyright claim, and I was able to release the video. 2 for 2. Which brings us to the present day, regarding the Battle of the Five Armies video. I proceeded precisely as I had done with the Desolation of Smaug video. I uploaded it, it was flagged by Content ID, and I immediately appealed. Unlike the Desolation of Smaug video or the Unexpected Journey video before, Warner Brothers did not rescind their copyright claim. They instead issued a DMCA takedown notice to YouTube. The video was deleted, and my channel received a copyright strike. At this point, due to the fact that YouTube doesn't seem to have any method of communicating with an actual human being on their own platform, I had to head to Twitter to complain to Team YouTube. So I sent them a lengthy message, which I won't read here because it's a repetition of what I've already explained to you guys. And YouTube responded shortly afterwards saying, quote, "To confirm, have you submitted a counter notification? More info on that here." And they dropped me a link. "You can resolve the copyright strikes by also getting a retraction from the claimant," end quote. So to be clear, at this point, I had not submitted the counter notification. This was at the point in time where I was sat with an unreleasable video and a copyright strike, and I seemed to be unable to proceed without risking the existence of my channel. Anyway, so that response from YouTube was as cookie-cutter a response as I should have expected, and it told me nothing that I didn't already know. So I responded, quote, "I have contacted the claimant and I don't expect a response. I have not submitted the counter notification yet. Is this my only option? Is there no other recourse through YouTube? As explained, the video in question is clearly fair use and is absolutely in line with similar content." End quote. Team YouTube then gave me another non-answer. Quote, "Just to clarify, we don't mediate on copyright disputes. This has to be resolved between you and the claimant. You have a few options to resolve the copyright strike. Wait for it to expire, get a retraction, or submit a counter notification." End quote. Evidently, they seemed to think that I cared more about removing the copyright strike than I did about being able to release the video that had taken months of my time to produce. So I rather frustratedly replied, quote, "To be clear here, if I upload a video containing copyrighted content in a format that is transformative, and I keep the video private so as to make sure it passes the automated checks, I then have to risk a copyright strike in order to challenge the copyright holder, even if the video was private at the time. And furthermore, if the copyright holder doesn't want the video to be released for any reason, I have to risk the termination of my account in order to challenge them." End quote. Again, this was before I had submitted the counter notification because, as with the copyright strike, I was very much afraid of the associated risks of doing so, as is clearly the intent of the system. "Come to our platform and upload your work, but don't you dare appeal copyright or we may delete all of your work forever and eliminate your source of income with zero explanation or recourse." Excellent. Sounds about right. So, anyway, I then looked into the option of filing a counter notification, and I directly asked YouTube, and here I'm quoting to them a box that I had to tick when I submitted the counter notification. Quote, "I understand that filing fraudulent counter notifications may result in the termination of my YouTube account. I need to know precisely what this means before I proceed any further." End quote. They are not clear at all on what they mean by fraudulent. Does fraudulent mean if I provide a false home address? Or does fraudulent mean if I claim fair use and the claim is rejected? I had no idea, and I honestly still have no idea because YouTube didn't answer my question. They responded, quote, "If you're confident that you have the rights to post the content, you can submit a counter notification. This article might help." End quote. And I then replied, quote, "Sorry, I need to be clear about this. If I am confident that the video falls under fair use and I submit a counter notification, what exactly is stopping the copyright holder from saying nah and my channel being deleted? I don't seem to have any recourse here," end quote. YouTube once again did not answer me, and I'm not going to bother reading you what they said because it was another non-answer. So I then asked them quite clearly, quote, "Please define fraudulent claim. I'm 99% certain that I'm correct here, but I seem to have to gamble my entire channel and a big part of my livelihood on that 1% chance that I am wrong. If I am wrong and the strike is upheld, does this count as a fraudulent claim?" End quote. This time, YouTube did actually answer me, "Just kidding, quote, we recommend to read the articles we've previously shared to know more about counter notifications and copyright," end quote. Excellent. Well, aren't you just as much use as an ejector seat in a helicopter? So my final communication with YouTube was as follows. I asked them 3 final questions very clearly before submitting the counter notification. Question 1. When I submit the counter notification under the belief that my video constitutes fair use, if it is deemed afterwards that the video is not fair use, is there any risk that YouTube will delete my channel? Question 2. After I submit the counter notification, the copyright holder must then prove to YouTube that they have taken legal action against me. If they do this, is there any risk that YouTube will terminate my channel? And question 3. If the copyright holder does not respond and YouTube reinstates the video, can the copyright holder then remove the video again after the fact? And if they do this, what are the consequences for my channel? So here I wanted YouTube to tell me precisely when and why they may terminate a channel, because that was not something I was willing to risk at all. And it's also something that's not clear at all from their FAQs. So YouTube's answer to this, quote, "If the counter notification wasn't accepted, the strike will remain on your channel and you'll have to wait for it to expire," end quote. So that was totally not what I asked, but okay. And they then said, quote, "Also, we look into misuse of our copyright tools and web forms to prevent abuse. Creators have the option to submit a counter notification, and once that's processed, we investigate for abuse," end quote. So whilst this didn't really answer any of my questions, it seemed clear to me, straight from the horse's mouth, that provided I wasn't abusing the system by, for example, uploading an entire film and then claiming it to be fair use, my channel would not be terminated. Given that, as some of you may remember, a couple of weeks prior to this happening, my second channel, the one on which you are watching this very video, was deleted for no reason and without warning, gave me very little confidence in their answer. So, after realizing that I didn't really have any choice at this point other than to file a counter notification, that is what I decided to do. Had I done nothing, the video would have been unreleasable, and I would have kept the copyright strike for 90 days. So, I filed the counter notification. As some of you will know, I filed this counter notification shortly before going away on my honeymoon. YouTube allows copyright holders 10 working days to respond, meaning that I had to wait 2 weeks, shitting myself that the claim would be rejected whilst on my honeymoon, which is an amount of stress that I really could have done without. So, on Wednesday the 19th of July, I received the following email from YouTube. Quote, "Dear Random Film Talk, in accordance with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, we've completed processing your counter notification. The following videos have been restored unless you have deleted them," and then they linked my video. End quote. So, to elaborate on what actually happened here, Warner Brothers did not look at the claim or the video. The counter notification timed out. It took 10 working days and then YouTube emailed me. The only views that the video had prior to release were from me, as I proof watch my videos before releasing them to make sure that they uploaded correctly. And as the view count did not go up, this means that no one from YouTube or Warner Brothers watched any part of my video. They didn't even click the link. My guess is that Warner Brothers did not even read the counter notification email, and that everything that Warner Brothers have done until this point has been a bot, meaning that my video has been delayed by almost a month through no fault of my own, and at no point has a human being been involved in the process. The fact that my claim was not rejected by Warner Brothers means that, legally speaking, I did absolutely nothing wrong. It means that I should have been allowed to release the video without dealing with Content ID, disputes, appeals, counterclaims, copyright strikes, or the threat of channel termination. Okay, so now that I've outlined what YouTube's copyright system is and my experiences with it, I'm going to briefly talk about fair use. Quoting directly from YouTube's help pages, quote, "Fair use is a legal doctrine that says that the use of copyright-protected material under certain circumstances is allowed without permission from the copyright holder. In the United States, works of commentary, criticism, research, teaching, or news reporting may be considered fair use. In the EU, more limited exceptions are recognized, and the use must fit into specific categories, such as quotation, criticism, review, caricature, parody, and pastiche. Other countries and regions have a concept called fair dealing that may work differently. In the United States, judges decide what's considered fair use. A judge will consider how the 4 factors of fair use apply to each specific case. The 4 factors of fair use are the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of commercial nature or is for non-profit educational purposes. The nature of the copyrighted work, as using material from primarily factual works is more likely to be fair use than using fictional works. The amount and substantiality of the portion used in relation to the entire copyrighted work. And finally, the effect upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work." End quote. And that's all you have to work with. There is no clearly defined bright line where something suddenly becomes fair use. To be clear, however, the blurriness of the fair use defense is not YouTube's fault. However, there are a few instances where YouTube has either reinstated a video after the claimant pled fair use, or instances where a claimant was sued by another YouTuber and the YouTuber won, claiming fair use. For example, there was a video by the Young Turks where they used clips from a Mountain Dew advert in a video where they explained why the advert had offended people. Mountain Dew asked YouTube to remove the video because they own the copyright, they own the content of their own advert, and the Young Turks aren't allowed to simply upload it and call it a new video. However, because this isn't what they did, they had created transformative content where they were, commenting on the controversy surrounding it, the Young Turks issued a counter notification, and YouTube then reinstated the video. Another example is there's a video titled Buffy vs. Edward Twilight Remixed, which uses footage from the Twilight films and Buffy the Vampire Slayer to contrast how women are portrayed in each. Again, the copyright holder for either Buffy or Twilight, or it could be both, I'm not sure, issued a DMCA takedown to YouTube. The content creator then issued a counter notification because it's transformative content, which is protected under fair use, and the video was then reinstated. One example that I find particularly interesting and relevant is Carl Benjamin versus Akilah Hughes. I will briefly explain what happened, and then I'll go into why this is important. And this is somewhat politically charged, so please leave your feelings at the door and just absorb this as an example of fair use. So, Akilah Hughes, aka Akilah obviously, made a video following Hillary Clinton's defeat in the 2016 presidential elections titled "We Thought She Would Win." Carl Benjamin, aka Sargon of Akkad, then created a mashup video using footage from Akilah's video titled SJW Levels of Awareness. Akilah, being the copyright holder of her own original video, We Thought She Would Win, issued a DMCA takedown against Carl's video because she deemed that he was illegally re-uploading her content. Carl's video was then removed by YouTube. In response, Carl issued a counter notification, which if you recall is step 4 of YouTube's copyright system, although in this instance, the fact that Akilah's video was not part of YouTube's reference library means that it never could have been detected by Content ID, which is why Carl had to start at step 4 instead of step 1. Carl's defense was that his video was, quote, entirely transformative and intended for parody. Akilah presumably did not respond because YouTube then reinstated Carl's video. This then led to Akilah filing a lawsuit against Carl, and the short version of what happened next is that the courts deemed Carl's video to fall under fair use. So, why is this particular example important? Well, Carl's video, SJW Levels of Awareness, was deemed from the editing and title to be, quote, for the transformatory purpose of criticism and commentary, end quote. The title and editing were both significant factors in determining fair use. Additionally, Carl was described by the courts as being politically opposed to both Hillary Clinton and Akilah, meaning that there would have been no overlap between their two audiences. Therefore, Akilah will not have lost any revenue as a result of Carl's video beyond him using her own words to make her look like a big fat dum-dum. Additionally, as Akilah was shown to have, quote, improper motivation in suing Carl, she was also ordered to pay his legal fees. The court did this in part to deter people from making fraudulent copyright claims. So, although both Carl and Akilah's channels are far bigger than mine, and although my videos are reviews rather than parodies, and although my Battle of the Five Armies video is 4 hours long, whereas Carl's SJW Levels of Awareness video was 2 minutes long, I feel there is a substantial amount of overlap between these two instances of fraudulent copyright claims. So bringing this back to the topic at hand, I'm going to read you my counter notification that I submitted to Warner Brothers through YouTube. Quote, "I believe that my video has been taken down for invalid reasons. My channel, like many others, consists primarily of analytical video essays that feature clips from the films or TV shows in question. My 2 most recent videos prior to this one are analyses of the previous 2 films in the series, whose copyright is also held by Warner Brothers. In the case of both of the previous videos, YouTube's Content ID system also flagged them as containing copyrighted content. However, when I disputed them, Warner Brothers agreed and released the claim. Subsequently, the videos were released. I am unsure why this 3rd video that uses footage from the 3rd film in the series is any different to the previous 2, but in this instance, Warner Brothers has decided that using footage from their films is no longer fair use. The reasons why I believe that my video, like all others on my channel, fall clearly under fair use are as follows. My video is transformative. It is not in any way a re-upload of the copyrighted work. All copyrighted content is used in my video entirely for the purposes of review. My video is clearly and entirely a commentary on and criticism of the original copyrighted work. My video will not cause any loss of revenue for Warner Brothers. My YouTube channel is small, the film in question is a decade old, and you cannot watch my analysis as a substitute for watching the original copyrighted work." End quote. So, given the previous examples I have referenced, I think it is pretty ridiculous that I had to take such a huge risk in order to defend the content that I had made. The video essay review is an entire genre on YouTube, and whilst I'm very proud of my videos, I'm not going to pretend that what I do is in any way boundary pushing or genre defining. My videos absolutely fall in line with other videos from similar content creators, many of whom you probably watch frequently, and many of whom influence what I do. If I was doing something that had not been done before, I could potentially understand having to jump through this many hoops to release my work. Given the struggles I've had, I can only assume that this happens to most, if not all, other content creators in this field. So, to summarize, I did nothing wrong at any point. I am an honest content creator. I am not scamming anyone, I do not take the piss regarding intellectual property, and I do not abuse YouTube's systems. However, what happened to me is precisely to the letter what should happen to every content creator, according to YouTube. My experience was not a bug, it was a feature. The system is working as intended. I do not believe that I communicated with a human being at any point during this process. The faceless entity known only as the copyright holder did not communicate with me at any point. They are also not compelled to provide any information to the claimant beyond yes or no. The way YouTube uses threats of copyright claims and channel termination is ridiculous, but it is also very effective. The reason they do this is because every time a channel appeals or issues a counter notification, YouTube has to do something, which means they have to pay their staff to do something, which means they need to have that staff in the first place. The fewer appeals and counter notifications there are, the lower YouTube's expenditure is. Which brings me to my final question. Can the system be fixed in such a way as to both protect intellectual property and protect channels that make transformative content? Probably not, and if it can, YouTube has zero incentive to fix their system because they have a monopoly. But nonetheless, I have a few suggestions based on my experience. Occasionally, videos will contain copyrighted content. When this happens, YouTube needs to be clear in their guidelines. Content creators need to know with zero ambiguity how to avoid a copyright strike and how to protect their channel. They also need a method of contacting something approximating customer service that does not require that the user go to a different platform, Twitter, in order to speak with something approximating a human being. Finally, and probably most importantly, relax the trigger point at which the Content ID system flags matched content. The entire point of the Content ID system is to prevent me from uploading content that I don't own. I can't upload the Misty Mountains MP3 from the Hobbit soundtrack without it being flagged, nor should I be able to, because I don't own that content. However, if I were to recreate and re-record my own rendition of the Misty Mountains song, it is now a different waveform, and therefore it will not trigger Content ID. I have in fact done precisely this on this channel. Where a gray area exists would be if I were to sample the original and then remix it, which is where the fair use argument would come into play. It does not benefit anyone for the Content ID system to flag 5 seconds of footage from a film. No one is uploading 5 seconds of footage from films, and if they are, these videos are not earning any revenue because they are 5 seconds long, and they will also not be losing the copyright holder any revenue because they are 5 seconds long. By extending the allowable time that a clip from a film or TV show can be used to, for example, 10 seconds, would make it that much less stressful for people like me to create videos. This isn't entirely YouTube's fault, as theoretically a copyright holder could say that if anyone uses any of their footage, then the video needs to give them 100% of the ad revenue. And I believe something similar happened to Total Biscuit on one of his podcast episodes, where he played maybe a 30-second clip from the trailer of a Nintendo game, and as a result, Nintendo claimed 100% of the ad revenue for the entire 4-hour podcast. In this instance, that information should have been publicly available. Total Biscuit should have known that he is not allowed to play any footage from a Nintendo trailer, because that is what Nintendo have decided is permissible use of their content. And as they own their own IP, they can absolutely decide to do this. Where this becomes a problem is when content creators make mistakes through no fault of their own, and as a result, their videos are either demonetized or deleted. When this happens, no one wins. The content creator loses revenue, their audience can't support them, or in some cases can't even watch the content to begin with. The content creator and the viewers both lose faith in YouTube's ability to be fair and open, and the copyright holder comes off as a colossal asshat. The only reason YouTube is able to do this with minimal backlash is because they have a monopoly. 2.1 billion people use YouTube every month, whereas, for example, Rumble only has 30 million monthly users. No one can compete with YouTube, so there is no reason for them to change. Additionally, when videos are scanned for copyrighted content by the Content ID algorithm, content creators need to be told exactly when every single rejected segment occurs so that it can be changed so as to adhere to YouTube's guidelines, and so that the content creator can avoid having to waste time and risk copyright strikes. The technology is there, so I have absolutely no idea why Content ID doesn't list every breach at once. Well, actually, the reason is probably to frustrate content creators who use copyrighted content so that they stop trying and thus save YouTube the time and effort required to comply with copyright laws. Additionally, videos that have not been released, so private or unlisted videos, should not trigger copyright strikes. The fact that they do means that if a video triggers a copyright strike and the counter notification is rejected, then the content creator has no choice but to only upload one further revised edit of the video every 90 days. As I said previously, I edited my first Hobbit video 79 times. I uploaded all of these re-edits across a period of 2 to 3 weeks. If I was only allowed to upload 2 every 90 days, as if I upload 3 and I receive 3 copyright strikes within 90 days, then the channel is terminated. It would have taken me 10 years to release 79 re-edits of the first Hobbit video, and even then, the video would not have been releasable, because the 79th edit was rejected. And at the risk of repeating myself, I categorically did nothing wrong with my Unexpected Journey video. Warner Brothers released their claim after I appealed it, meaning that had Warner Brothers not released the claim, and as they don't need to give you a reason when they reject it, they can seemingly do it for any reason with zero recourse, YouTube's system would have required that I spend over a decade releasing a video that is permissible under fair use according to the copyright holder. So all of the power lies with the copyright holder. They can block channels from releasing content, and they don't even have to explain themselves. This is why YouTube's copyright system is fundamentally broken. The combination of the trigger-happy Content ID algorithm and the abusive copyright strike system means it can be incredibly difficult to produce honest content on YouTube if that content contains copyrighted material. Okay, that's all for now. I hope this video has thoroughly explained the various delays in creating my breakdowns of The Hobbit, the struggles of content creators, and the complex absurdities of YouTube's copyright system. Had I known it would be this much of a ball ache to make The Hobbit videos, I may well have chosen a different topic, and I will definitely think twice before approaching another property owned by Warner Brothers. I feel like everyone kind of already knew that the copyright system was broken, but hopefully this video has made clear exactly why it is so broken. Thank you for listening. Check out the main channel if you haven't already, and I will sign off with a quote from Burn After Reading. What did we learn? I don't fucking know. I guess we learned not to do it again. Although I'm fucked if I know what we did.